Have you ever walked away from um, a seemingly normal conversation feeling completely drained, like as if you've just been handed this heavy, invisible backpack full of someone else's rocks?
Oh, absolutely. It is a very specific, deeply confusing, kind of heavy.
Right. You walked into the room feeling perfectly fine. I mean, your morning was great, your energy was balanced, but the moment you walked out of that interaction, you just felt
Ah,
entirely exhausted.
yeah, physically weighed down and suddenly anxious. You might have just been grabbing a quick coffee with a friend or sitting through a standard 10-minute check-in with a coworker.
Exactly. Yet somehow, through the course of just a few sentences, you managed to absorb their anxiety, the frustration with their spouse, their stress about a deadline.
And now you are just carrying it around in your own nervous system.
And that phenomenon, well, that is exactly why we are here today. Welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to help you master your emotional boundaries.
To radically protect your peace of mind, really.
Yeah, and to permanently stop operating as an emotional sponge for the rest of the world. We've pulled together a massive stack of research to help you do this.
We really have. Instead of just giving you like surface level advice, we are going to look at the cognitive behavioral therapy mechanisms of reactivity.
Right. Along with neuroplasticity concepts from Mind Valley, some deep psychology on personal agency, and highly practical communication frameworks.
From organizations like Mental Health America and Momentum Psychology, plus some great insights from clinical psychotherapy department. That's just a different flavor of anxiety.
So the research points to a sweet spot, which they call being bilocal,
Yes, being bilocal is the ultimate hallmark of psychological resilience. A bilocal individual maintains a robust internal locus.
meaning they take full responsibility for their own effort, their own reactions, and their integrity.
Right, while remaining perfectly capable of acknowledging external realities. It is the wisdom to know the difference between what you can influence and what you cannot.
So when a crisis hits, a bilocal person does what is within their power and then gracefully relies on outside resources.
Community support, or simply the passage of time for the variables that are genuinely out of their hand.
Yeah, this internal versus external framework becomes intensely relevant the moment we are put under pressure by other people.
Oh, absolutely. That's the real test.
When that coworker comes to your desk in an absolute panic or a family member makes a passive-aggressive comment at dinner, your locus of control dictates whether you react or respond.
And those are two very different things.
I want to paint a picture of the mechanics here. Reacting is like a fire alarm going off in the amygdala.
It immediately cuts the power to your prefrontal cortex, which is your logic center.
You're suddenly in the passenger seat of a swerving car, and you just blindly grab the steering wheel and yank it. The part of your brain that actually knows how to drive the car is offline.
That physiological breakdown is completely accurate. A reaction is an impulsive, primitive survival mechanism.
It's just fight or flight, right?
Exactly. When someone brings chaotic energy into your space, if you don't have a firm boundary, your brain perceives it as a literal physical threat. The amygdala hijacks the system.
Cortisol and adrenaline just flood your bloodstream. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing becomes shallow.
And your rational thinking literally narrows. You are no longer engaging in a conversation. You are fighting for survival.
Which results in raising your voice, getting aggressively defensive,
Weird for many people, completely shutting down and fawning just to make the threat go away.
right, you grab the wheel blindly with zero thought about the long-term consequences of where the car is going to crash. Responding, however, is keeping the power running to the prefrontal cortex.
You say in the driver's seat.
You see the obstacle, the coworker's panic or the family member's insult. You take a breath, calculate the distance, and smoothly steer around it.
Responding requires the insertion of a pause between the stimulus and your action. It is highly intentional.
You are not suppressing the emotion, though.
Yeah.
You are experiencing the anger or the anxiety, but you are not allowing it to dictate your motor functions.
Right, you're balancing the emotional data with logical processing. And the cognitive behavioral therapy sources provide a fascinating, incredibly simple neurological hack for creating that pause.
Oh, effect labeling.
Yes. Simply naming the emotion you are experiencing, it sounds almost too basic to be effective.
Just saying, I'm mad, basically.
Essentially, yes. But the neuroimaging data on this is profound. When you are in the middle of an emotional spike, simply saying internally, I'm experiencing anger right now, physically alters the blood flow in your brain.
Wow, just the internal phrase does that.
Yeah. You are taking the chaotic, unlabeled energy in the emotional center and forcing it through the language processing centers of the brain. To attach a word to a feeling requires the prefrontal cortex to activate.
So by naming the emotion, you are literally turning the lights back on in the rational executive functioning part of your brain.
You force the brain to categorize the threat rather than just blindly running from it.
Okay, so if the prefrontal cortex needs that kind of power to keep us responding rather than reacting, we have to look at how we are charging the system in the first place.
This is a crucial point.
You cannot expect to smoothly steer around a conversational obstacle at 3 o'clock in the afternoon if you threw your entire nervous system into a state of panic at 7 in the morning.
Exactly. The way we prime our system in the first hour of waking dictates our baseline emotional permeability for the rest of the day.
The brain operates as an incredibly sophisticated prediction machine.
Yes.
During the first 30 to 60 minutes of the day, as you transition out of sleep, your brain is actively scanning the environment to answer one question.
What kind of world are we operating in today?
That's the question, which makes the modern morning routine an absolute disaster for our emotional boundaries.
Because the very first thing you do when you open your eyes is reach for the smartphone on your nightstand.
You open a social media app, read a politically charged news headline, or dive into a stressful work email. And by doing that, you are immediately inheriting someone else's emotional state.
You're instructing your brain's prediction machine that the world is chaotic, urgent, and hostile.
You trigger an artificial spike in your cortisol awakening response. You haven't even gotten out of bed, yet your body is already preparing for combat.
If you start your day by letting the external world dictate your internal state, you have already forfeited your locus of control.
You must protect those first waking moments with absolute vigilance if you want to have the energetic capacity to hold boundaries later in the day.
The research from Mindvalley gets really deep into how we should be using that morning window instead. They feature cognitive neuroscientists like Dr. Caroline Leaf and therapists like Marissa Peer.
And their work focuses heavily on creating mental blueprints through intentional language.
The core premise is that the subconscious mind is always listening, and every thought you entertain forms a literal blueprint that your brain and body then work tirelessly to make a reality.
The neuroplasticity aspect of this is really compelling. The mind is designed to control the body, not the other way around. The language you use internally creates neural pathways.
Over time, those pathways become default highways for your thoughts.
If your internal dialogue is a constant loop of, I'm always overwhelmed, I can't handle this, people always walk all over me, your brain accepts that blueprint as absolute fact.
And it filters your perception of reality to prove it true. But I struggle with this affirmation concept, and I think a lot of highly analytical people do.
It can definitely feel a bit woo-woo to some.
Yeah. If I look in the mirror and say, I am completely at peace and I have perfect boundaries, but my chest is tight with anxiety and my boss just walked all over me yesterday.
Your brain just flags the affirmation as a lie.
Exactly. It feels like toxic positivity. Doesn't standing there lying to yourself create more internal conflict?
That skepticism is entirely valid, and it's exactly why most people fail when trying to use affirmations. If your conscious mind flat out rejects the statement as a falsehood, the affirmation will not penetrate to the subconscious level.
It just bounces off.
It bounces off your critical faculty and, as you said, creates more anxiety. For an affirmation to successfully bypass that resistance, it must be constructed scientifically.
They have to be present tense, positive, and personal. So saying, I will be better at setting boundaries tomorrow doesn't work.
No, it actively works against you. By saying, I will be, you are placing the desired state in the future. You are reinforcing to your brain that currently, in the present moment, you are not good at boundaries.
You are instructing your brain to maintain the status quo today,
You must phrase it in the present tense. I am.
even if you don't feel it in that exact second.
Yes. Marissa Peer uses a brilliant analogy to explain why this works. Think of the subconscious mind as a piece of hot toast and the affirmation as a pat of butter.
Okay, I like where this is going.
The hot toast cannot reject the butter. It simply melts in and absorbs it. Your subconscious mind does not possess a critical filter. It does not fact-check your statements. It takes instructions literally.
So when you say, I am grounded and capable of handling this conversation, you are giving your nervous system a direct command to begin downregulating your stress hormones to match the statement.
Exactly. The body follows the mind's instruction.
But what if the toast still feels like it's rejecting the butter? What if the critical conscious part of your brain is screaming so loudly that the affirmation can't even reach the subconscious?
The founder of Mindvalley, Vishen, suggests a psychological workaround for this exact problem. He calls them lofty questions.
This leverages a mechanism in the brain called the reticular activating system, right?
Yeah.
Which acts as a heuristic search engine.
Yes, the human brain is functionally an answering machine. If you pose a question to it, it is neurologically compelled to search for an answer.
So instead of declaring, I am incredibly confident, which your critical mind might reject as a delusion, you turn it into a question.
Right. You ask yourself, why am I so confident today? Or why is it getting easier for me to hold my boundaries?
That subtle shift is incredibly powerful, because when you ask, why am I so good at staying calm when people are upset? Your brain cannot simply reject the premise.
It immediately goes to work scanning your memory and your current environment for evidence to answer the question. It starts highlighting moments of resilience you might have ignored.
You completely bypass the critical faculty's resistance because you aren't making a statement it could disagree with. You are giving it a puzzle to solve.
You essentially trick your brain into gathering evidence for the reality you want to create.
Okay, so we've established an internal locus of control. We've bulletproofed our morning without our phones, and we've primed our brain's search engine to look for our own resilience.
The foundation is set.
But then, we walk into the office, or we sit down at Thanksgiving dinner. The environment hits us. Why do we so easily lose that primed piece the second we are in the presence of someone else's negativity?
This requires us to draw a hard line between true empathy and what the psychological literature calls emotional permeability.
Permeability, okay.
We live in a culture that highly praises empathy, which is generally positive. Empathy is the cognitive and emotional capacity to understand and share the feelings of another human being.
However, many individuals who proudly identify as deep empaths are actually suffering from unchecked emotional permeability.
And how do you differentiate the two? Because absorbing someone's pain feels like empathy in the moment.
Yeah, true empathy is the ability to walk to the edge of the hole someone is in, look down, acknowledge their pain, and throw them a rope.
Emotional permeability is jumping into the hole with them, breaking your own leg, and now requiring someone else to rescue both of you.
Oh, wow. That is a stark difference.
Permeability is emotional contagion without a conscious filter. Because human beings are wired as social, tribal animals, we possess mirror neuron systems.
Right, so when you walk into a room and encounter an angry or anxious person, your mirror neurons attempt to match their state in order to build rapport.
To ensure you aren't cast out of the tribe, you unconsciously sync up with their nervous system to prove you belong.
If you are highly permeable, you experience this contagion automatically. You mistake their physiological arousal for your own.
True empathy allows you to understand their anger without your own heart rate exceeding 80 beats per minute. Permeability is when their anger literally becomes your high blood pressure.
The sources offer a mantra to combat this mirror neuron hijacking, and it is beautifully blunt. I am not responsible for how other people feel or react.
It is a radical statement for someone who has spent their life acting as a sponge.
But why is it our default setting to act as the sponge? Why does it feel so unnatural for so many people to just let someone else be upset without trying to fix it?
Clinical psychotherapist Terry Cole dives deeply into this in her Boundary Boss framework. She traces it back to profound childhood conditioning.
We were raised and praised to be what she terms self-abandoning codependence.
Self-abandoning codependence, that is a brutal mirror to look into.
It is, but look at the cultural and familial programming most children receive. We are handed scripts like, be a good girl, don't make a fuss, or turn that frown upside down.
You're making your mother sad.
Children quickly learn that their physical safety and emotional belonging within the family unit depend on their ability to perfectly manage the emotional weather of the adults around them.
If dad is angry, the child learns to be hyper-accommodating to diffuse the situation.
We are conditioned to abandon our own internal reality to ensure the external environment remains stable.
Which creates an adult who physically cannot tolerate the discomfort of someone else's displeasure. And this manifests in what Cole calls the insta-yes.
The insta-yes is the ultimate symptom of an unhealed people-pleaser. It is an autonomic nervous system reflex. Someone makes a request. Can you take on this extra weekend project? Or can you help me move on Saturday?
Or even just, can I vent to you about my relationship for 2 hours? And before your prefrontal cortex can even calculate your own level of exhaustion, your mouth blurts out, yes, absolutely no problem.
You agree to the demand instantly, because your brain perceives the potential disappointment of the other person as a life or death threat of tribal rejection.
You are grabbing the wheel blindly just to avoid the perceived danger of saying no.
And this brings up a deeply uncomfortable truth from our research regarding why we jump in to help people. We tell ourselves we are just incredibly caring, selfless individuals.
But the psychological reality of projection-based helping reveals something much darker.
This is one of the most confronting concepts in boundary work. When you constantly jump in to fix someone else's problems, giving unsolicited advice, managing their crises,
Bailing them out of the consequences of their poor choices.
right, you are not acting out of pure altruism. You are actually engaged in a covert form of control.
Wait, so my desperate need to help you is actually just a selfish attempt to control you?
You are attempting to control uncertainty in order to soothe your own anxiety. Seeing someone you care about in pain or watching them make destructive decisions creates massive cognitive dissonance.
It creates discomfort within you. You cannot tolerate the anxiety of watching them struggle, so you step in and try to micromanage their life.
You try to force them to adopt your solutions. Because if you could just fix them, the chaotic variable in your environment is stabilized and you can finally relax.
Your helping is really about alleviating your own distress.
That reframes the entire dynamic of the savior complex. It is an inability to sit with the discomfort of another person's autonomy.
And it ultimately harms the person you are trying to save. The clinical truth of human behavior is that people rarely change based on good advice.
An individual only fundamentally alters their behavior when the pain of remaining exactly the same finally outweighs the pain and effort required to make a change.
When the consequence of the pattern becomes louder than the comfort of the pattern,
Yes, when you constantly rush in to fix their problems and absorb their emotional fallout, you are acting as an anesthetic.
you are numbing the very pain they need to feel in order to hit the threshold of genuine transformation.
Mature, boundaried love is having the fortitude to allow someone to do their own work. You can offer support, you can express belief in their capabilities, but you refuse to carry the weight of their lessons for them.
So we understand the profound psychology behind why we shouldn't absorb other people's chaos. But theory is one thing, practice is another.
Definitely. When you are physically cornered by a chronic complainer or someone starts aggressively trauma dumping on you, your nervous system still spikes.
How do we build an energetic shield in real time?
The first step is cultivating somatic awareness, knowing the physical signs that your boundary has been breached before you even mentally process it. Astute psychology points out that emotional absorbers experience distinct physiological markers.
These are sudden, inexplicable mood shifts. You are perfectly happy, and 5 minutes into the conversation, a heavy gray cloud settles over your mind.
Or acute physical fatigue. Your limbs literally feel heavier. That's a result of the parasympathetic nervous system attempting to shut down the overwhelming stimulus.
And the classic sign, rumination. Long after the person has left your physical presence, your brain is still aggressively replaying their problem, trying to solve it while you are trying to fall asleep.
If you hit any of those markers, your permeability is too high. To counter this, behavioral psychologists recommend deploying real-time active shielding techniques.
These are not metaphors. They are cognitive interventions designed to break the mirror neuron loop. Let's break down the 5 most practical shields from the research.
Shield number 1, the timeout boundary.
This is a structural shield deployed at the very onset of the interaction. You define the container of the conversation before the chaotic energy can spill everywhere.
If a colleague approaches you with a high-stress complaint, you mentally calculate your capacity, and then you vocalize the perimeter.
I really want to hear what's going on, but I only have 10 minutes before I need to shift my focus back to this report.
You've instantly removed the feeling of being trapped. They can vent, but the escape hatch is already open and agreed upon.
Shield number 2 is heavily cognitive, the bubble.
While visualization can sometimes sound overly mystical, it is a highly effective tool for directing the visual cortex to override the limbic system.
As the person is speaking, pouring out their anxiety or anger, you actively construct a vivid mental image of a thick, transparent shield surrounding your body.
When they project intense emotion, you visualize it as dark smoke or physical arrows striking the outside of your bubble and harmlessly sliding down to the floor.
This mental exercise forces your brain into the role of a detached observer rather than an active participant. Shield number 3 is crucial for when the anxiety starts to make you feel physically untethered.
Physical grounding. When you absorb someone else's panic, your awareness floats up into your head. You lose connection with your physical reality.
To break the circuit, you use proprioceptive feedback. Subtly shift your weight, plant both of your feet firmly on the ground, and actively press down.
Notice the texture of your socks. Wiggle your toes. By forcing your brain to process sensory data from your extremities, you send a signal up the spinal cord to the brainstem.
That you are physically safe, present, and separate from the person talking to you.
Shield number 4 is the internal mantra of clarifying ownership. While they are spinning their web of drama, you maintain your grounded posture and internally repeat, this is their experience.
This is their nervous system. It is not my responsibility to regulate them. You are consciously drawing the line of where you end and they begin.
And finally, shield number 5 is what you do the moment they walk away. Emotional cleansing.
Animals do this naturally. If a gazelle survives a predator chase, the moment it is safe, it will physically shake its entire body to discharge the excess adrenaline.
It signals to the nervous system that the threat has passed. Humans rarely do this. We just carry the stagnant stress hormones into our next meeting.
When a draining interaction ends, you must engage in a somatic reset. Stand up, shake your hands out vigorously for 10 seconds.
Take a walk around the block. Go to the restroom and run cold water over your wrists to stimulate the vagus nerve and slow your heart rate. You must physically wipe the slate clean.
That somatic discharge is so critical. But there is another massive internal boundary that we constantly violate ourselves, causing unnecessary emotional drainage.
Oh, rehearsing fights in our heads.
Anticipatory anxiety driven by the brain's default mode network. It is exhausting.
You know you need to have a tough conversation with a friend about a boundary. So while you're in the shower or driving to work, you play out the confrontation 100 different ways.
If I say I can't come to the wedding, they're going to say I'm selfish, and then I'm going to bring up what they did last year, and then they'll start crying.
You are subjecting your body to the physiological stress of an argument that has not happened and likely will never happen. You are attempting to pre-manage their reaction to your boundary.
You are trying to figure out the exact, perfect combination of words that will result in them not being upset.
But if we return to our core mantra, you are not responsible for how other people feel, you realize this rehearsal is futile. You state your need clearly, and you allow them the dignity of their own unmanaged reaction.
Which brings us to the execution phase. Internal shields are fantastic, but eventually you have to open your mouth and verbalize the line.
How do we articulate our limits clearly, firmly, but without unnecessary aggression?
For complex, high-stakes relationships, like a spouse, a parent, or a close colleague, we turn to a framework developed within dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT.
Originally created by Dr. Marshall Linehan.
Yes. Momentum psychology uses an adapted version of this called Dear Man plus Lay. It is a highly structured communication protocol designed to keep the prefrontal cortex engaged during difficult conversations.
Let's break down the acronym because it provides a literal script builder. The D stands for describe.
The crucial element here is radical objectivity. You describe the situation without any emotional adjectives or judgments. You do not say, you always dump your toxic negativity on me after work.
That instantly triggers their defensive response. Instead, you describe the undeniable facts. I've noticed that for the past 3 weeks, during our walk to the parking lot, our conversation revolved entirely around complaints about management.
You state what a camera would record, then the E is express. Here, you express your internal emotional reality using I statements.
You must avoid the phrase, you make me feel, which is an accusation that shifts the locus of control.
Instead, you say, when we spend that time focusing on the negative, I feel completely drained and I carry that stress home to my family.
You own your reaction. The A is assert needs. This is the actual boundary line. I need to leave work at work. I'm asking that we shift our end-of-day conversations to things outside of the office.
The R is reinforce. This is where you explain how the boundary serves the mutual interest of the relationship. If we can focus on our hobbies or weekend plans, I know I'll be a much better friend to you, and we'll both avoid burning out.
The M and the A dictate your demeanor. Stay. Mindful of your goal, don't let them deflect the conversation onto a different topic, and appear confident in your posture and tone.
And N is negotiate, being willing to find a workable middle ground if the core boundary is respected. But the plus at the end of the momentum psychology framework is perhaps the most powerful psychological tool in the entire stack.
It is called mining for gold. Explain the mechanics of mining for gold, because on the surface, it almost sounds like you're flattering them.
It relies on a psychological phenomenon called cognitive dissonance, studied extensively by Leon Festinger in the 1950s. People have a deep-seated need for their internal self-image to align with their external behavior.
When you mine for gold, You publicly assume positive intent on their part, regardless of whether you actually believe it in the moment. Give me the script for that.
Before you assert the boundary, you say something like, "We've been friends for a long time, and I know that you are a deeply caring person. I know the absolute last thing you would ever want to do is cause me more anxiety."
Oh, that is a brilliant trap.
It creates instant cognitive dissonance if they try to argue with you. If you tell them they're a good, caring person who doesn't want to hurt you, and then they get angry and demand the right to continue crossing your boundary, they are actively contradicting the positive identity you just handed them.
They want to be seen as a good friend. So, by framing your boundary as something a good friend would respect, you provide them with a graceful psychological exit that allows them to agree with you while saving face.
It completely disarms the conflict. That framework is incredibly robust for a planned sit-down conversation. But daily life is mostly comprised of quick, unexpected boundary checks.
The sources from Mental Health America offer rapid-fire scripts for these moments. Let's analyze a few scenarios. Scenario 1. The workplace. Your department is already understaffed, you are at max capacity, and a manager swings by to casually drop a new project on your desk.
The instinct of the insta-yes is to just take it to avoid looking incompetent. The boundaried response is, "I want to ensure this project gets the attention it deserves. Currently, my bandwidth is fully allocated to Project X. I can take this new task on, but we will need to discuss which of my current priorities can be paused or delegated."
You aren't saying a petulant, "No, I won't do it." You are simply presenting the math of your capacity and forcing them to manage the reality of limited resources.
Scenario 2. The emo texting friend. It's 9:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. You are in your pajamas trying to read a book, and your phone starts vibrating with a 5-paragraph text wall of high drama venting from a friend who does this constantly.
You do not ignore it entirely, but you do not engage with the content. You reply, "I can see that you are dealing with a lot right now, and I believe in your ability to navigate this. However, I am winding down for the night and do not have the emotional bandwidth to give this the focus it needs. I will be turning my phone off, but let's connect over the weekend."
Firm, compassionate, and definitive. Scenario 3. The family dinner. A relative makes a deeply critical or offensive comment disguised as a joke. When you visibly pull back, they immediately say, "Wow, you're so sensitive. I was just kidding. Learn to take a joke."
You deploy the mining for gold technique, combined with a direct assertion. "I know you love me, and the last thing you'd ever want to do is hurt my feelings. Because of that, I am asking you to stop making comments about my weight. I want us to have a great dinner, so let's move on to a different topic."
And the overarching rule for all of these scripts across all relationships is that you must stop over-explaining. No is a complete sentence.
Over-explaining is the death of a boundary. When you provide a laundry list of justifications for why you can't do something, you are subconsciously signaling that you don't believe you have the inherent right to say no.
You sound like a subordinate asking for permission from an authority figure. Furthermore, you hand the other person ammunition.
Right? If someone asks you to go out on a Friday night and you say, "I really can't, I'm so exhausted from work and I have to wake up early to wash my dog and I think I'm getting a cold,"
They will systematically dismantle your excuses. "Oh, just drink a Red Bull, wash the dog on Sunday, we'll stay out for just 1 hour, you'll feel better getting out of the house."
you gave them a puzzle to solve instead of a boundary to respect. If you simply say, "Thank you so much for thinking of me, but I'm going to pass tonight," there's nothing to argue with. You must learn to let the awkward silence do the heavy lifting.
Which transitions us into the reality of the aftermath. When you begin enforcing these limits, letting the silence hang, and refusing to over-explain, people are not always going to celebrate your newfound health.
Managing the pushback and the evolution of your relationships is the final and often most painful frontier of this work. Systems inherently resist change.
A relationship is an ecosystem, and it will always fight to maintain homeostasis. If someone has spent years benefiting from your lack of boundaries, from your willingness to always yield, always absorb, always fix, they will experience your new boundaries as an act of hostility.
So what is the tactical response when someone is just breathtakingly clueless, or they push back with an incredibly intrusive question? Say you are at an office party, you decline a drink, and a coworker loudly asks, "Why aren't you drinking? Are you pregnant? Or do you have a problem?"
When a question crosses the line from curious to wildly inappropriate, momentum psychology recommends a tactic known as the WOW technique. It relies entirely on the psychology of the pregnant pause.
You look the person dead in the eye with a neutral, slightly curious expression, no anger, no sarcasm, and you simply say, "Wow."
Just wow, and then nothing else. Absolute silence. You do not break eye contact.
By refusing to answer the question, and instead commenting on the audacity of the question itself with a single word, you take the massive ball of awkward tension they just threw at you, and you drop it directly back into their lap.
9 times out of 10, their brain cannot handle the social pressure of the silence. They will immediately start rambling, backpedaling, and apologizing to fill the void.
Silence is an impenetrable shield. You are never obligated to participate in a conversation that violates your dignity.
But what if it isn't a rude coworker? What if it's someone you love, and no matter how many times you explain your boundary, they just fundamentally refuse to understand it?
They twist your words, argue with your reality, and accuse you of being cruel.
This is where we have to introduce the concept of perceptional ceilings, discussed extensively in the Mindset Mentor research. We assume that because we are speaking the same language, we are communicating. We are not.
Every human being perceives reality through a highly distorted lens, ground down by their own childhood trauma, their emotional maturity, their insecurities, and their ego. You cannot explain a three-dimensional boundary to someone who only has the emotional capacity to see in 2 dimensions.
Exactly. Imagine a long-term friendship. You go to therapy, you do the work, you expand your emotional vocabulary, and you achieve a deeper level of self-awareness. Your friend does not.
One day, you set a healthy boundary. You say, I value our friendship, but I need a few days of alone time to recharge my social battery.
You are speaking from a place of secure attachment, but your friend's perceptional ceiling is governed by deep-seated abandonment issues. Their brain literally cannot translate your words accurately.
It hits their perceptional ceiling and distorts. They hear, you are exhausting, I don't love you anymore, and I am abandoning you.
And no amount of over-explaining or reassuring is going to fix that translation error, because the error is in their software, not your delivery. You cannot force someone to grow tall enough to see over the wall.
You have to accept the heartbreaking reality that being misunderstood by them is not a failure of your communication, nor is it a true rejection of who you are. It is simply a difference in depth. You must release the desperate need for them to agree with your boundary in order for it to be valid.
This highlights the most difficult phase of personal growth: identity lag. As you build this internal locus of control and fortify your shields, you begin to experience profound dissonance with the people who used to make sense to you.
Identity lag occurs because you haven't just outgrown the other person. You have outgrown the specific version of yourself that the relationship was originally built upon.
If I look back at some of my oldest friendships, the foundational blueprint of the relationship was often based on a dynamic where I was the hyper-accommodating listener and they were the chaotic center of attention. We both knew our roles, the play worked.
But now you have rewritten your character's script. You refuse to play the role of the endless sponge. When you walk onto the stage and deliver lines of self-respect and boundaries, the other person doesn't know how to act because you are breaking the established rules of the system.
The entire dynamic destabilizes. So what is the resolution? Do you just cut everyone off?
The resolution is that the relationship must either evolve or it must dissolve. Many people, when presented with the new, healthier version of you, will rise to the occasion.
They will respect the boundaries, adjust their behavior, and the relationship will deepen into something much more authentic.
But others will view your growth as a threat. They will fight, manipulate, and attempt to guilt trip you back in the old small box because that version of you served their needs.
When that happens, protecting your peace means granting yourself permission to let the relationship dissolve. It is painful, but holding onto a relationship that requires your self-abandonment is a far deeper pain.
And this brings us to the ultimate capstone of the research, the final psychological truth that makes all of this boundary work possible: understanding projection loops.
The Mindset Mentor defines projection loops as the realization that human behavior is almost entirely self-referential. When someone attacks your boundary, criticizes your choices, or misunderstands your intentions, they are rarely interacting with the real you.
They're interacting with a projection of their own internal wounds plastered over your face. They aren't rejecting me, they are wrestling with their own ghosts.
When you truly internalize the fact that everyone is essentially walking through life as a wounded, conditioned child operating a grown adult's body, you stop taking their reactions personally.
You realize that a toxic coworker's aggression is about their profound feelings of inadequacy. A parent's guilt trip is about their terror of losing control and aging. It has absolutely nothing to do with your inherent worth.
As the mantra goes, people are just doing what they're doing. Your only job is to decide whether or not you are going to stand in the splash zone.
To bring this massive deep dive to a close, Let's synthesize the architecture we've built today. You do not need to move to a remote cabin in the woods to protect your peace. Isolation is not a boundary.
True peace is highly active. It requires shifting to an internal locus of control, taking absolute ownership of your responses while accepting what you cannot change.
It means protecting your brain's prediction machine every morning, replacing smartphone doom scrolling with carefully constructed present tense mental blueprints.
It means retiring the role of the emotional sponge, recognizing the profound difference between true empathy and permeable contagion.
You stop using projection-based, helping to soothe your own anxiety, and you allow people the dignity of their own painful lessons.
You deploy real-time shields, timeouts, cognitive bubbles, physical grounding, and you articulate your limits using frameworks like Dear Man plus Life.
Leaning heavily into assuming positive intent to disarm conflict. And above all, you accept that boundaries are not punishments inflicted on others. They are instructions on how to love you sustainably.
By refusing to let your energy be siphoned away by chaos, you ensure that you actually have high-quality, authentic presence left to give to the people and the pursuits that truly matter.
So as we wrap up, what does all this mean for you, the listener?
Right.
Now, it means recognizing that a lack of boundaries does not make you a nicer person. It simply invites a lack of respect.
When you continuously allow people to bypass your limits, you're actively training them to believe that your needs are secondary.
By building these shields and standing firm in your own locus of control, you aren't just protecting yourself. You are fundamentally elevating the standard of every relationship in your life.
I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to carry with you this week. We spent a lot of time dissecting identity lag and how painful it is when other people want you to remain small and accommodating.
But consider this inward reflection.
Mm.
What if the person you are currently most terrified of setting a boundary with is actually just a mirror?
What if they reflect a past version of yourself, a highly anxious, permeable, people-pleasing version that you are still secretly trying to appease?
If you can recognize that, and if you can generate enough self-compassion to finally forgive yourself for your past lack of boundaries, how much easier will it be to look someone in the eye and set a new standard tomorrow?